It was a little after midnight when my phone lit up. I was lying in bed, half asleep, the kind of sleep where your mind's still racing from the day but your body is begging for rest. The screen glowed with a message from my sister, "Come to my room. I need to talk." At first, I thought I was imagining things. We weren't exactly close. We lived under the same roof, shared memories, family dinners, even some laughs, but there had always been this strange distance between us. She was quiet, kept to herself most of the time, and rarely opened up about anything personal. That's why the message shook me. I hesitated. The house was silent, dark, and the air carried that stillness only found in the deep hours of night. I stared at the message for a few seconds before slowly getting out of bed. I didn't know what to expect. Was she in trouble? Had something happened? Or was she just feeling lonely and wanted someone to talk to? As I walked through the hallway toward her room, 1,000 thoughts swirled in my head. The light under her door was on. That, too, was unusual. She always preferred darkness. I knocked lightly. No answer. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. She was sitting on the edge of her bed, wearing a long hoodie, legs curled up underneath her like she'd been waiting. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, something in her expression made me pause. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was something else, something unreadable. "I couldn't sleep," she said quietly, barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking about stuff, about us, about everything." I sat down on the chair near her desk, unsure of what she meant. We were family, bound by blood. What was there to think about? And yet, the way she looked at me, it felt like she was carrying the weight of something huge, something she hadn't been able to say for a long time. She took a deep breath and looked down at her hands. "You probably never noticed, but things changed between us a while ago." I didn't know how to respond. My heart was pounding now, and the room felt heavier with every second. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, regret, maybe. Or guilt. She looked up at me again. "I need to tell you something, but I don't know if I should." I leaned forward, concerned and confused. "What is it?" She hesitated. Her eyes welled up, but she wiped them quickly. "Promise me you won't hate me after this." I nodded, though I had no idea what she was about to say. What followed next changed everything I thought I knew about my family, and about her. But before she could say another word, we both heard the creak of footsteps outside her door. Someone else was awake. And just like that, the night took a turn I'll never forget. The creak outside the door froze us both. We didn't say a word. I could see the panic in her eyes as she quickly wiped her face and sat upright like nothing had happened. My heart was racing now, not because of fear, but because something was clearly wrong, something she didn't want anyone else to know. After a few silent moments, the sound faded. Probably just someone going to the bathroom, I thought. But the moment had already shifted. She looked at me, almost as if debating whether to keep going or drop it altogether. I didn't push her. I just sat there, waiting. "I don't think Mom or Dad ever noticed," she said finally, her voice softer this time. "They were always too busy with work, with each other, with pretending everything was fine." She paused, as if the memories were coming back too fast to control. "I used to stay up late every night," she continued. "Just sitting here, staring at the walls, wondering what it meant to be part of a family. Everyone thinks we're perfect from the outside, but it never felt that way inside these walls." I listened quietly, unsure of where this was going. Her tone wasn't angry, it was more like someone who had carried too much for too long. I hadn't realized she felt this way. Growing up, we did our own thing. I hung out with friends, went to school, chased normal teenage distractions. She stayed in her room most of the time, always reading, writing in journals, listening to old music on her headphones. I just assumed she liked being alone. But maybe she wasn't alone. Maybe she was just hiding. She looked at me again. There are things you don't know. Things I wish I never had to deal with. And lately, I've started remembering stuff. Feelings. Situations. People. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. She looked away, and the silence between us thickened. I felt this strange weight settle over my chest, like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't see but could feel pulling me in. Then she whispered something so quietly I almost missed it. What if I told you there was a secret in this house? Something no one talks about, but we all feel. I didn't know how to answer that. But deep down, I knew, this night wasn't just about a talk between siblings. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that had been buried for years. I sat there, watching her carefully, trying to piece everything together. Her words echoed in my head, a secret in this house. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I could see in her face that she was struggling. Not just with telling me, but with the weight of everything she'd been holding inside. It was like she had been living with a shadow over her for years, and tonight she was finally ready to pull back the curtain, even if just a little. She took a shaky breath. You remember Uncle Ray? She asked suddenly, eyes fixed on the floor. I nodded. Yeah, kind of. He moved out of state years ago, right? He used to stay in this house, when we were younger. Her voice got lower. He always acted like the fun uncle, bringing us gifts, cracking jokes. But you were too young. You didn't see what I saw. I could feel my stomach tighten. The air in the room seemed colder now, heavier. I didn't know what she was trying to say, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. He would come into my room late at night, she said, staring at the floor. He'd just sit and talk sometimes. Other times, he'd say things that didn't feel right. But I didn't know how to explain it. I thought maybe I was overreacting. I felt frozen. My throat was dry, and my mind was racing with questions. Why had no one said anything? Why had no one noticed? She looked up at me, and there was a tear in her eye now, but she didn't let it fall. I told Mom once. I was 12. She told me I must have misunderstood. That he was family. That I shouldn't make up stories. My chest tightened. Suddenly everything made more sense, why she changed after that year, why she withdrew, why she stopped smiling the way she used to. That's when I learned to keep things inside, she said. And now, years later, I still don't know what to do with all of it. I didn't know what to say. My mind was filled with anger, confusion, disbelief. But then she added something that stopped me cold. I found something a few nights ago in Dad's old closet. A letter. Not from Uncle Ray, but from someone else. And it proves I'm not crazy. She reached toward her drawer, hands shaking, and paused. Before I show you, you need to promise, once you know, there's no going back. I stared at her hand hovering over the drawer. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. My thoughts were spinning. What kind of letter? Who was it from? What could possibly be written in there that she was afraid to show me? And why now, after all these years, was everything suddenly being dragged into the light? She slowly opened the drawer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It looked old, yellowed at the edges, creased down the middle like it had been read 100 times. She held it for a moment, like she was trying to decide whether to hand it over or put it back and pretend none of this ever happened. I found it tucked behind some boxes, she said quietly. It was inside an envelope with no name, no date, but when I read it, I knew it was written by someone in this house. She handed it to me without another word. As I unfolded the paper, I could see the handwriting was shaky, rushed. I scanned the first few lines and instantly felt a chill. It talked about guilt. About regret. About something that should have been stopped but wasn't. It never mentioned names, but there were details, small ones, that only someone close to us would know. It mentioned a girl who never spoke up again and a promise that went unkept. Whoever wrote it had been hiding something, something dark, something they couldn't carry anymore. My hand started shaking as I looked up at her. "Do you know who wrote this?" She nodded slowly. "I think it was Dad's handwriting." I compared it to one of his old notebooks in the garage. The air in the room was thick now. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. My mind was screaming with questions. If Dad knew, why didn't he protect her? Why didn't he stop it? Or was he somehow involved in ways we didn't understand? Before I could ask, we both froze. A sound, faint but clear, came from down the hallway. A door creaked open. Then soft footsteps. Not hurried, not loud. Just enough to remind us we weren't alone in the house. She looked at me, her eyes wide. "I've been hearing those same footsteps every night for the last week. Right outside my door." My blood ran cold. "Someone else knows," she whispered. "And I don't think they want us to find out the truth." The footsteps stopped just outside her door. Neither of us moved. My eyes darted to the door handle, half expecting it to turn. But it didn't. Just silence again. Still, the tension in the room had changed, it felt like we were being watched. I slowly stood up, my heartbeat thudding in my ears, and walked over to the door. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing. No breathing, no shuffling. Just emptiness. But I knew someone had been there. When I opened the door, the hallway was dark. The light from her room spilled out just enough to show the faint outline of something at the end of the corridor. I stepped out, squinting. A small envelope lay on the carpet, placed carefully near the baseboard. My chest tightened as I picked it up. It had no name, just a single word written in block letters on the front, "Enough." I brought it back into her room and closed the door behind me. She sat up straighter when she saw it. "That wasn't there earlier," she whispered. Inside the envelope was a photo, blurry, but clearly taken inside our house. In the corner of the image was my sister, standing near the attic door, holding something in her hands. I stared at it, confused and uneasy. The photo wasn't recent. She was younger in the picture, maybe 17. Same hoodie. Same haunted look in her eyes. But the real question was, who took this? "That was the night I found the locked box," she said, her voice shaky. "In the attic. I never told anyone about it. Not even you." She stood up and walked to her closet, pulling out a small, beat-up metal box wrapped in an old t-shirt. She placed it on the bed. "I've never opened it. I found it hidden behind one of the beams. There was no key. Just this box. And ever since that night, weird things started happening. Notes. Sounds. The feeling that someone's been following me around the house." I stared at the box. It looked harmless, dusty, dented, but something about it felt wrong. Heavy, not just in weight, but in meaning. Whoever took that picture knew where I was, what I was doing. And they've been watching me ever since. I didn't know what to say. It was like we were suddenly trapped in a story far bigger than just family secrets. We weren't just uncovering the past, we were stepping into something active, alive, still playing out around us. That's when we heard it. A phone buzzed on the dresser. Not hers. Not mine. It was an old flip phone, tucked beneath a pile of books. Neither of us had ever seen it before. I picked it up and flipped it open. One new message. "You're getting too close. Stop now." She grabbed my arm, her voice barely a whisper. "I think this house has been lying to us all our lives." I stood there holding the old flip phone, the message still glowing on the screen. My sister backed away slowly, her face pale, eyes locked on the device like it was some kind of cursed object. Everything was crashing down around us, the letter from Dad, the photo from years ago, the box from the attic, and now this message. Someone had been tracking us, not just recently, but for years. And it wasn't just about what had happened in the past, it was about keeping it buried. She sat down hard on the bed, her voice shaky. I need to know what's inside that box. I don't care anymore. I nodded. There was no turning back now. We found a rusted screwdriver in the kitchen and carefully pried open the lock. The box groaned as it gave way, and when the lid popped open, we both held our breath. Inside were old photographs, newspaper clippings, and at the bottom, another letter. The first photo we pulled out made our stomachs drop. It was of Uncle Ray. Younger, dressed in a police uniform. Behind him stood Dad. The two of them smiling. Not a casual photo. It looked staged, like some kind of celebration. The newspaper clipping told the rest. Local officer cleared in family dispute. The article was vague, filled with legal words, but it mentioned a minor, a sealed investigation, and the fact that charges were never filed. The name wasn't listed, but we knew exactly who it was about. My sister's hands were trembling as she unfolded the letter. It was from our father. This time, dated and signed. To whoever finds this, I failed her. I was weak. I let fear keep me quiet. And in protecting my brother, I destroyed my own daughter. I hope one day, the truth will come out, even if I'm not around to face it. We sat in silence. The weight of it was unbearable. Dad had known everything. He'd protected his brother, lied to all of us, and carried that guilt until the end. My sister's pain wasn't imagined, it was real, buried under years of silence and denial. But just as the pieces began falling into place, another truth hit us. Wait, she whispered, pulling out one last photo. This isn't from the past, it was us. Sitting in her room. Tonight. The same angle. The same moment. Taken from outside the window. We turned slowly, hearts pounding. Her curtains were slightly parted. Outside, the dark yard stared back at us, but someone had been there, only moments ago. That was the final twist. This wasn't just about a buried family secret. Someone still alive was trying to keep it hidden, and they were closer than we ever imagined. Because the phone buzzed again. One new message. You should have stopped. And below that. Now it's your turn to stay quiet. We didn't know what was coming next, but we knew this night wasn't over. Not even close. The second message hit harder than the first. My sister clutched the box against her chest like it could protect her, but we both knew that whoever was behind this was watching, waiting. We couldn't sit in fear any longer. The truth was finally in front of us, and hiding from it wouldn't make us any safer. It was time to end this story on our terms, not theirs. We didn't sleep that night. We took the box, the photos, the letters, and drove to the police station just as the sun began to rise. For the first time in years, my sister spoke clearly and without hesitation. She told everything. The visits from Uncle Ray, the letter from Dad, the photo left in the hallway. We showed them the message on the old phone and handed over the evidence from the attic. The officer on duty didn't seem shocked. In fact, he said something that still lingers with me. You're not the first ones to come forward about him. But you might be the first with real proof. That changed everything. An investigation was reopened. For the first time, our family's history wasn't a buried secret, it was part of a case. My sister, after years of silence, was finally heard. She started seeing a therapist, something she never thought she'd do. And I stayed by her side through it all. What she went through could have destroyed her, but instead, it became the reason she started rebuilding herself. The phone, the messages, they traced it back to an old number registered under a fake name. They never caught the person who left it on her dresser. But we figured it out eventually. It was our cousin, Eric, Uncle Ray's son. He had grown up with his father's stories, convinced his dad had done nothing wrong. He thought scaring us would keep the truth buried. But it didn't work. The house, the same one we grew up in, never felt like home after that night. My sister moved out a few months later. I helped her pack. She didn't want to take much, just a few books, some journals, and the letter from Dad. Not because she wanted to hold on to the pain, but because it reminded her that even in the silence, someone had wanted to make it right. I stayed in the house a bit longer, just to say goodbye to what we used to be. One evening, I stood in the hallway outside her old room, the same place where this all began. It was quiet now. But not the suffocating silence we once feared. This time, it was peace. We didn't get every answer. Not every scar was healed. But the biggest secret, the one that had poisoned our family, was no longer hidden. It was exposed. And with that, we were free. The story wasn't just about what happened in the past. It was about truth, pain, and what it takes to finally move on. Sometimes, healing starts with a single step. And for us, that step came, the night she called me into her room. 46.